Great to be here. My apologies that I don't speak German. It's a problem that Americans have. They only speak one language. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about BuzzFeed, but I'm also going to tell you about how we think about the world, and give hopefully some practical examples of things that you can use in your businesses and your work. So BuzzFeed is a site with, we're over 150 million unique visitors now. We get 75% of that traffic from social, meaning Facebook, Twitter, email, Pinterest, WhatsApp. We have about half of our traffic is people who are 18 to 34, and more than half of our traffic is mobile. And so we started BuzzFeed with this idea that the media industry was changing, that people, the way ideas spread, the way content spreads, was really very different when the audience is the distribution, when people sharing content with each other can allow you to reach the scale of a traditional media company without owning a broadcast pipe or a printing press or any of the traditional ways that you would reach this massive audience. And so BuzzFeed has been able to reach the scale of a traditional media company without really any of the traditional things that used to be required for that kind of scale. So we see this big alignment happening on the web, from portals to search to social, and that realignment is really shaping a lot of the things we see in marketing and advertising and media and publishing. One idea that goes through this talk is the Bored at Work network. There's literally hundreds of millions of bored office workers around the world, and they spend half their day working, and half the day they're sharing things on Facebook, they're blogging, they're posting things, they're IMing each other, they're emailing each other links. And collectively, they're bigger than any traditional media network. More people are reached by the Bored at Work network than traditional media, and that is something that is a pretty interesting change. And more recently, there's the Bored in Line network. I used to hate mobile. Mobile was terrible because you would get an email back, you make something awesome, you'd publish it, you get an email back that would say, on my BlackBerry, will look when I get in the office. And people couldn't actually see it. Now, more people are accessing content through mobile than desktop, and people are watching, are consuming BuzzFeed on their mobile devices throughout the day. Our prime time for our mobile app is 10 o'clock at night, so people are on their couch watching television, but also looking at their mobile devices. I got into this stuff through some early social media experiments. Some examples. This was back in 2001. I was a graduate student at the MIT Media Lab, and like most graduate students, I was procrastinating doing my master's thesis. That's what graduate students do. They procrastinate when they should be working. And I went to Nike's website, and Nike had just launched this service where you could customize your shoes with a word or a phrase. And so being a smartass, I tried to customize my shoes with the word sweatshop on the side. Now, sweatshop means a shop or factory where workers toil under unhealthy conditions. And Nike wrote back, a customer service representative wrote back and said, we can't put this on your shoes because it's inappropriate slang. And so I responded, I said, no, it's in the dictionary, it means a shop or factory where workers toil under unhealthy conditions, can you put them on the shoes? And they wrote back another excuse, and we had this back and forth. And at the end of the correspondence, they just said, we reserve the right to not send you the shoes. And I said, okay, fair enough, but I'll change the ID on the side, but can you at least send me a picture of the 10-year-old Vietnamese girl who stitches them together? And they didn't write back after that. I don't know why. I have water in my back pocket, it's a trick I have. This was in 2001, before Twitter, before Facebook, before YouTube. People didn't really think about things going viral, but there were these things called email forwards, where people would forward emails to all of their friends. And I sent this to 12 of my friends. They started sending it to their friends. Then it reached activists who actually knew about the sweatshop issue. I knew nothing about the sweatshop issue. And they started forwarding around. Reporters started getting it. They started writing it. Reporters are also part of the Bored at Work network. And I ended up on the leading morning show debating sweatshop labor, and with Nike's head of global PR. I didn't actually know anything about this story. So I'm sitting here thinking, why am I here instead of somebody who actually knows about this issue, who's dedicated their lives to human rights? And it was because I made something that was shareable that people wanted to pass around. After that, I wanted to see, could I do it again? The Nike email was kind of an accident. With my sister, I started the New York City rejection line. This was a phone number where if someone was hitting on you and they wouldn't take no for an answer, you could give them your number, and when they called, they got an automated rejection message. It would say, the person who gave you this number doesn't actually want to see you again. You can press 1 to speak to a comfort specialist. You can press 2 to hear a sad poem written by a kindred spirit. Or you can press 3 to cling to the unrealistic hope a relationship's still possible. And we told a few people about it. It started to spread. Ended up reaching millions of people. Of course, then, like we were experts, I became an expert on sweatshops because I made a funny email. I became an expert on relationships. So here we are on CNN and People magazine. After that, we created another project. I may have pointed in the wrong direction or something. We created another project called BlackPeopleLoveUs.com. The idea of Black People Love Us was to make fun of white people who were so proud of having black friends that they were constantly bragging about it, like kind of going too far in the other direction maybe. And so we created this site about Sally and Johnny, these two super white people, and they're so proud of having black friends. They have testimonials like, Sally loves to touch my hair, she always asks me how I got my hair to do this, or Johnny calls me demand, that puts me at ease, or is that roof high enough or does it need to be raised? Johnny gets props from a close friend. So we created this and then of course became experts on race because we made this site. Here we are debating on live morning television whether the site is hilarious or a little over the line. So this is a kind of awkward conversation. After doing these projects, people used to always ask me, wow, you really have a lot of time on your hands. Like, are you making money off these? No. Are you, like, why are you doing things? And mostly we're doing it because it was really fun and really interesting to see how things spread on the internet, to see why they spread. And the fact that you could make something with essentially no budget and have it reach millions of people was pretty amazing and new. And so that was why we were doing it. But people started to ask, how can I use this in my marketing? How can I use this in my work? And so I'm going to share a few examples of the kinds of things that people share. One thing is to have a heart. So people often get very stuck in their own head and they think social media is about integrating with APIs and this trick and that trick. This is a story on BuzzFeed that was posted by a community member, got millions of views, about a soldier who went to Afghanistan and came back and his injured, and his fiance nursed him to health, and there's photos of their wedding. It's a touching, moving, painful human story that people share at a real, and I think one of the things that I like to point out is that there's not tricks. A moving, compelling, important human story is something that people love to share or will want to share. Content is also about identity. So if any of you are left-handed, you'll recognize what this is. Lefties have to write over the ink on the paper, and so they get ink on their hands. And we did a post about challenges of being left-handed, all of the annoying things that lefties have to deal with. Now, you would think that that would not be a very popular post because only 10% of people are left-handed. It turns out it was shared all over the place, over millions of views. And the reason was that left-handed people would share it because it was part of their identity. So if you were left-handed and you saw this post, you would share it to Facebook and your friends would learn something about you. The content was good, but it was also a way for you to express your identity and communicate who you are to your friends. And I think that sometimes people make the mistake when they're doing marketing of creating a broad campaign that they hope will appeal to everyone because they're trying to make sure that it's successful. And they forget that if it appeals to everyone, it isn't going to really touch a particular group in a way that's strong enough to get them to go that extra step of sharing something and passing something on. Capturing the moment. So this, 2 years ago we had an earthquake in New York City, and we don't normally have earthquakes in New York City. And so people were emptying out of buildings onto the street and running around like the world was ending. It was a very minor earthquake, and I grew up in California, so it was a little humorous to me. And There was no damage and no injuries. And so an hour after the earthquake, BuzzFeed published a post which was horrific photos from the East Coast earthquake. This is one of the photos, a yogurt that fell over. There was also a lawn chair that fell over, a picture that was a little askew. 1 million views in like 12 hours because it was part of the zeitgeist. It was what people were talking about at that moment. Cute animals. People make fun of cute animals. And they say, why are there so many cute animals on the internet? Part of the reason is that cute animals are about what it means to be human. They're not just about animals. Having empathy towards animals is part of the way that we know that we have our basic humanity. If you think about serial killers, they always tortured animals when they were kids. If any of you are science fiction fans, and the movie Blade Runner, the Harrison Ford character is hunting out androids, and one way he can tell they're androids is they don't have empathy towards animals. Everything else about them is human, but they don't have empathy towards animals. So when people complain that there's too many cute animals on BuzzFeed, I always ask them, are you an android or a serial killer? Because those are the two types of people that do not have empathy for other living things. So humor is also inherently social. This printer is now called Bob Marley because it's always jamming. This is something that when you laugh with people, you connect with them and you feel closer to them. And then human rights. One of the reasons why I think gay marriage has been such a huge issue or has made so much progress in the last few years is because on Facebook, everyone is connected with each other. And if you see someone who doesn't have the same rights as you, you're more likely to stick up for them because you're connected to them on social media. And in contrast, things like nude pictures of Scarlett Johansson are very, very popular. I know that will shock you. On things like Facebook, or on things like Google. People will click on these things, people will search them, but you don't really see people posting. Now maybe this is different in Germany. People have told me that Germans are much less prudish than Americans, so perhaps this isn't true here, but you don't really see Americans, at least, posting nude pictures of Scarlett Johansson on Facebook or writing, hey, I heard there's nude pictures of Scarlett Johansson. I have some time this weekend. If someone could send them to me, that would be great. Instead, they'll post, join me in helping the people of Japan after the tsunami, or something that expresses the positive identity that they want other people to see. So some of what we do is science. What I was just telling you was really the art of social publishing, having an emotion, tying into human identity, giving people a way to connect with each other. We also do a lot of science. This is a simple equation that is from the field of epidemiology, the study of how diseases spread. We don't spread diseases at BuzzFeed. Hopefully none of you are spreading diseases either. You never know what happens in the evening after conferences, but the mathematics is basically the same for how content spreads or how ideas spread. This equation is the R equals beta Z, and the reproduction rate of content is basically calculated by the probability of someone sharing something multiplied by the average number of people they share it with. So if there's a video and most people who see it share it, and they don't just share it with a few people, they share it with everyone they've ever met, that's going to be a hugely viral video. If there's another piece of content where most people see it, don't share it, and they only share it, if they do share it, they only share it with 1 or 2 people, that is going to be something that doesn't go very viral. And this allows us at BuzzFeed, for both our advertising content and our editorial content, to optimize the site based on rates of sharing. So you can see if we have 3 pieces of content and we're trying to decide which one to promote, we can look at the R value and can say every time we promote a piece of content with a 0.5 R value, we will see 100 people turn into 50, turn into 25, turn into 12 and a half, and it will eventually double the number of people who reach it, which is a lot better than sending it to something where you only get a slight little additional bump. And so this is a worldview that shapes a lot of what we do at BuzzFeed, but thinking about the rate of sharing of different pieces of content and then shifting our promotion and our marketing and our spend based on that. We also use machine learning to do a more complex model for predicting what will take off in the future, and we, let's see, sorry, I'm having a little clicker trouble. And then this is an example which I think is a pretty interesting example just to explain how we think. So Pinterest is pretty big in the States. I know it's not as big in Germany, but what we see is that when people come from Pinterest to a piece of content on BuzzFeed, they never share that content on Twitter. If they come from Pinterest, they will either share on Pinterest or they will share on Facebook. So we can see from the referral source that there's a certain behavior. When you come from Pinterest, you either share to Pinterest or you share to Facebook. And so we use that to change the way we manage the site. So if you come to BuzzFeed, this is the share buttons that you see next to an image. We noticed that if you came from Pinterest, you're never going to share to Twitter. So we changed the buttons to have the pin it button big, then the Facebook button, then email. We got an 8% increase in click-through rates on the sharing buttons. On the main post share bar, we had an even more dramatic effect. This is the normal way that we would manage the page. And then this is over 100% click-through rate improvement when we put pin it first and Facebook share second and put Twitter at the end. And so what that lets us do is look at the network and see where are people coming from and change the way we display the page depending on the source that they're coming from. And that's led to a lot of rapid growth. We also have a social dashboard that lets us see the blue, which is how much traffic we send to a piece of content, and then the red, which is all the sharing that happens on top. And that really expresses our worldview. The blue shows that you can promote something. The red shows that what you're promoting is worth promoting, is something that people like, is something that consumers want to share. Another important thing is that what spreads depends a lot on platform. So I think people really understand the Google worldview, which is that Google is about connecting people with information they want. It's kind of solitary. You type something you want, and then Google gives you a result, and you get that information in your head. So in the early days of Google, some smart people created a site called about.com. The idea behind about.com was to make a page for every single Google result that someone would enter into the search box. So there used to be golf magazines, and the golf magazines would describe how to improve your golf game, and there'd be a bunch of tips in that. But what about.com realized is that when people are on Google, they'll just type, how do I get rid of my slice? And so they just make that page. Or how do I stop oily skin? I can see just from, in this light, it's hard to see, but there's a few of you that have oily skin in the audience. So let's just give those people a minute so they can read this page. It's pretty useful if you have oily skin. Not necessarily something you would share, though. It's something that's useful to you, but isn't necessarily the kind of thing you share. And that's why Google, I think, has had some trouble with social, because so much of their model is about focusing you on something that's interesting just to you, not something that you would want to talk about with your friend. Facebook, on the other hand, I think it's still not that well understood. People see content spreading on Facebook and they wonder, why is that spreading on Facebook? It doesn't make sense that that would be shared. But Facebook is really about a way of connecting people with each other. And a lot of the content on Facebook is really a form of communication. Content and communication have really started merging. That's like when you see the WhatsApp acquisition, when you see Facebook, when you see the explosion of social media, a big part of that is content is being used in a different way, which is a way of communicating and connecting with other people in your life, as opposed to just something that puts information in your head. For example, this is a picture of two basset hounds running. This is not what Larry and Sergey had in mind when they wanted to organize the world's information. Nobody goes to Google and just spontaneously searches for basset hounds running. And yet it turns out that on the social web, basset hounds are very important. And the reason, think of it this way, you go home for the holidays, the family dog runs out. Everyone in the family pets the dog. You feel closer to the dog, but you also feel closer to everyone in your family the moment you're all petting the dog. In fact, for most families, the moment when everyone's petting the dog is the highlight of the family weekend, and it's just all downhill the rest of the weekend. That connection you feel, it's simple, and it's and I think what you see happening on Facebook is people sharing animal pictures are having the same emotion as their friends, even if they're not in the same room, and that makes you feel closer, more connected to your friends. So you can see on BuzzFeed, this post had over 1 million views. That was when BuzzFeed was actually a much smaller site, so it's a pretty big number. Here's another example. This is from from the Board at Work Network. So this is 13 simple things to get you through a rough day. Step 1, print this picture and hang it over your desk. If Britney Spears can make it through 2009, I can make it through this day. You put that over your desk, you know, you actually feel better about your day. It actually improves your feeling, and then you share it to your friends, and your friends feel better, and then they share it to their friends, and it has a ripple effect. And really, it's not about any of the individual items, like the guy getting chased by the ostrich or the hedgehog wearing a funny little hat. It's about the way that it allows you to feel better and connect to your friends. Sometimes this has a, let's see. Oh, okay. Sometimes this has a very therapeutic effect. So when the Sandy Hook shootings happened in the United States, where small children were killed by a gunman, and people were in just utter disbelief. They were like, how could this happen? How can evil like this happen in the world? And we noticed something interesting, which was that the next day, people were going to BuzzFeed, going into our archives and sharing comforting content that would make them feel better after this traumatic thing happened. We covered the news story, which was a horrific news story, but we also saw this behavior and we said, let's make a post that is more therapeutic in nature, and we did 26 moments that restored our faith in humanity this year, and it included a rugby star visiting his biggest fan in the hospital, or this one, which I really love, which is a kid in a wheelchair whose parents built an ice cream truck around his wheelchair so that on Halloween he could go have the coolest costume of any of the kids in school. And so people were sharing this, and one of the things we do, which I recommend all of you do as well, when you make something and it's being shared, look at what do people say when they share it. And so for this post, people were sharing on Facebook saying, I needed this today. And that was more important than our headline. The reason they were sharing is because they needed something comforting. And I think you can learn a lot by seeing what are people saying when they interact with content. I've mentioned identity before. If you have curly hair, you could share this post and your friends will understand some of the challenges of having curly hair. Quizzes have been really very big for BuzzFeed recently. Again, very tied to identity. And also, a personality quiz gives people the opportunity to have conversations with each other. So we did this quiz, what city should you actually live in? I got Paris, then I retook it and I got Tokyo. People retake them until they get the result they want. And then you can talk with your friends about what does it mean and where would you actually want to live and what kind of life aspirations you have. And so it's a great way to communicate with other people and gives an icebreaker to communicate with your friends. So the business of social publishing. So this is, sometimes at this point in the talk, you might be wondering, how do we make money? Do we make any money? Are we one of those companies that just takes lots of venture capital money and doesn't make any money and then talks about all the cool things we're doing when actually none of it's sustainable? The answer, fortunately, is no. We're a profitable company, and 100% of our revenue comes from social content marketing. A few years ago, I had a board meeting, and my board said, hey, do you have any revenue? And I said, no, there's no revenue. And then I had to have the rest of the board meeting, which was very awkward. So I decided that we needed to generate some revenue. And I didn't want to just put banner ads all over the site because I didn't feel that banner ads worked that well. And also, we were developing all this amazing technology to distribute content on the social web. I wanted brands and advertisers to get the benefit of all of that tech work we were making in our product. So we made the decision to do what a lot of people now are calling native advertising, which is to make the advertising look and feel and be powered by the same technology as the core site, so it was at home on the site. It's clearly labeled as advertising. The brands have the byline, so in this case, GE is publishing the content. It has their name on it. It's clear that it's not editorial content, so there's a very clear separation between church and state. But the brands are being held to a higher standard. They need to make something that's worth clicking and worth sharing, which is a much higher bar than just putting a banner ad on a site. But when they do it, they get 10 times the click-through rate, they get earned media, they get sharing, they get great brand lift and purchase intent goes up and all kinds of great things happen. And so it was hard at first to get people to do this, but once We got a few people to do it. GE was one of the early partners, and they got great results. More and more brands started to do it. You can see, well, there was a lot of brands there. I don't know. Maybe the forward one will work. So you can see that I think maybe there's someone secretly pressing buttons in the back. This is all just a ruse. I'm not actually controlling anything. I'm also lip syncing this whole talk, and it's pretty impressive because I'm making a lot of verbal errors. You wouldn't think you would do that if you were lip syncing, but it's more authentic that way. So we work with 62 of the top 100. We work with 62 of the top 100 brands in the U.S. And so we are now working really with most anyone you can think of, anyone who cares about social marketing, social advertising, branded and brand advertising. Here's a case study. This is from Virgin Mobile. This is 10 movie plots that would have completely changed if they had cell phones. Die Hard would have been a very different movie if Bruce Willis just had a Virgin Mobile phone. He could have just called the police. Home Alone, also very different, much shorter movie. It would have been a short instead of a feature film. This is a fun one from Toyota Prius. The Toyota Prius is a very cool hybrid, but it's not the only cool hybrid. There's also lots of cool hybrid animals like ligers and donkras and beefaloes. This is something that I don't think a brand like Toyota would have done a few years ago. But every major brand is realizing they need to speak the language of the web. They need to make engaging content that a new generation of consumers are going to share and engage with. And this was a cool example of that. Here is a more DIY how-to piece of branded content with makeup tips. And it's cool to see that these are useful to women, and you can actually see the response on Twitter and Facebook, so brands can actually see that their advertising isn't just reaching people, but that it's actually affecting people's lives and making an impact and generating conversation. And our research shows that on the left you can see the value of people being exposed to advertising on BuzzFeed. It has an effect when people are exposed to it, but it has an even bigger effect when people are exposed to it through sharing and through word of mouth. So we really shown with our research that word of mouth is a very effective form of advertising, and that online you can do word of mouth advertising at scale, and you can measure it more effectively than you ever have been able to before. And so it's pretty compelling when you see a friend recommending an article with makeup tips, and a brand sees that and they think, wow, that makes sense that would be effective. But then we really have research to back it up as well. So social publishing, you guys have to be fast. If you want to see some of these slides, you got to be quick. Don't like peek at your phone or anything. You got to have be very present. So we've been growing really fast. When we started BuzzFeed, I didn't think that we would be that big of a company. I thought social publishing is something that I'm passionate about. I was always obsessed with how do ideas spread? Why do certain things become popular and other things don't become popular? Can you influence it? How do you measure consumer behavior? All of these things were fascinating to me, but I thought social would be a niche part of the media industry, and it wouldn't be that big. And I thought online would be a niche part of the media industry, but the traditional media was still, take decades and decades before it was fully digital. And the change has happened much faster than I expected. We're starting to see for the first time online publications growing to the scale of traditional media companies and generating real revenue, where BuzzFeed is able to do a lot of things that people used to think wasn't possible to do online. People used to think online meant it's not that expensive, there's not that much investment, it doesn't make that much money, but you can build a good business because the costs aren't that high. Now I think people are realizing that the way people will consume media, the way advertising will work, the way entertainment will work is going to be digital, it's going to be social, it's going to be mobile. And so some of the things that we're doing that I think people didn't realize online media companies would be able to do. We've been investing in serious reporting and journalism, breaking lots of news scoops. Doing long-form content, 6,000 word pieces, 12,000 word pieces. We are building an investigative journalism team. We have started to hire foreign correspondents. We reported from inside Syria. We have a reporter on the ground in Kiev right now, and we are expanding internationally. And so these are all things that people used to think, were only possible for big traditional media companies to do. So here's some examples of news reporting from politics, world, business, entertainment. People share content that is breaking news content. It's a very popular kind of content to share. When we started BuzzFeed, people didn't share news. They shared cute kittens, they shared internet memes, they shared humor. And that was all that you really found on the social web. Now you're seeing people start to share long-form journalism, investigative journalism, and other kinds of content. This is a long-form piece, 6,000-word piece, 1.5 million views on BuzzFeed. It's a great story about a guy who bought a house for $500 in downtown Detroit, in the burned out areas of sort of post-industrial Detroit where houses are abandoned. He bought a house for $500, fixed it up. Other people in the neighborhood were doing it, and he tells the story of how these people are trying to bring back this neighborhood in Detroit. Long, thoughtful thing. We didn't think that people would read stuff like this on mobile. We found the average time on this article in mobile was 22 minutes. On desktop, it was only 18 minutes. So people were spending more time on their mobile devices reading this long-form content than even on desktop. And so some of the assumptions we had about how people would consume content on mobile were totally wrong. People are watching more than half of our video content on mobile. People are reading our long-form content on mobile. And so there's a huge expansion to the reach that a media company can have because of mobile and social. We just, in January, this Mark Schuff's, a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist, came to BuzzFeed and is building an investigative journalism team that will take 6 months to a year before they even file stories. It's another thing that you thought online media companies won't do that. They're about publishing as many things as you can a day and being as quick as possible. But now that we have 180 people on our editorial team alone, we are able to have some people focus on big investigative work. Some people do quick stuff. Some people do entertainment. Some people do news. And we now are at a point where we're able to do what you used to think only traditional media companies would be able to do, which is big, long, meaty investigative stories that take a lot more resources than something like blogging. And we also do a lot of original video. You saw very quickly, if you were fast, our studio in LA, where we have a growing team of really talented people creating entertainment content. Our focus on video is to do for YouTube what we've done for Facebook and Twitter with the main site. And so we're making content like Sad Cat Diary with 13 million views, The Angriest Babies in the Whole World with over 5 million views. And we are starting to expand and do longer form content. Over 100 million views each month. And we started this about a year ago. So it's grown from no views to 5, 10, 30, 50, and now over 100 million video views. And video is more expensive to create as well. And so we're starting to see that industry mature, where you actually can generate revenue from online video, and you don't need to, say, do a television show. We've had people approaching us saying, why don't you do a television show? Let's do a TV show together. And we're like, no, we love the web, and the web is growing faster, and it's starting to be a sustainable thing that can really generate real revenue. You don't need to necessarily do a traditional television show. So we have a lot of foreign correspondents. You saw their faces there if you were very fast. This is going to be a test. This is like, there's subliminal messages in some of these slides. You can't actually see them, but I'm programming you. At the end of the talk, you're all going to get up and do like a chicken dance or something. We also have been expanding globally. That's part of why I'm very excited to be in Germany and learn about the German media market. I think there's a lot of opportunities to do a BuzzFeed, a version of BuzzFeed for Germany. We already have over 1 million readers each month in Germany, and we don't publish any German content. So thank you for your tremendous English literacy. It's I think the English literacy rate in Germany is slightly higher than the United States. That just says more about our education system, though. We have versions of BuzzFeed in Brazilian, Portuguese, in Spanish, and in French, still in a fairly experimental stage. In London, we have a big team now with 25 people and growing. That is we have one of the biggest sites in the UK. And we are, Scott Lamb, our VP of International, is here somewhere and is looking at Germany and also a few other countries to really expand and do what we've done in the UK and some other countries. And we're doing this growth while profitable. So this is not just the venture-backed company that is able to lose money on new initiatives, but because of our revenue model being strong, we've been able to continue to invest in the company while remaining profitable. So to conclude, social publishing is an art, science, and a business. You need to have a heart and think about human identity and human psychology. You need to measure things, understand the dynamics of how things spread, and you need to build a real business. And I think for mobile and social, branded content is a much better form of monetization than banner ads. You need to understand your platform. People will search for information that they want to get in their head on Google, but Facebook is more about the heart and about connecting with other people in your life that you care about. And the big shift to social content has come to advertising. Banners are kind of an accident of history. They're small, that you can't really tell a story. Brands are now able to tell a story and make interesting, engaging content and think more like a publisher, and that's a big opportunity for marketing. And then online publishing was thought of as small, but there's increasingly people taking it more seriously and being more ambitious about it and building big companies that are able to do a lot of the things that traditional media has done. And I think some of the best traditional media companies have figured out how to transform their businesses for the web, and I think you're going to see a very exciting period in the next 5-10 years of real great journalism, great entertainment, inspiring content being produced with digital, social, mobile being the primary consideration. And at dawn we ride. Thank you so much.